In the 2000s, Marvel launched a line of comics known as the Marvel Ultimate Universe, and those comics were kind of insane. For those unfamiliar, the Marvel Ultimate Universe aimed to recontextualize Marvel comics through a modern lens. Peter Parker was a high school student again. Captain America woke up from the ice in the 2000s instead of the 60s, and Nick Fury looked like Samuel L. Jackson. These are just a few examples of the way the Ultimate Universe comic line reimagined Marvel comics to make them more appealing and accessible to audiences who might not have been familiar with the decades of comic book continuity. There were plenty of amazing comic books that came out during this time period, such as Bryan Michael Bendis's and Mark Bagley's Ultimate Spider-Man, but there were also some not so good comics as well, like Ultimatum. Long story short, despite a lengthy run, the Ultimate Universe line ended in 2015, and for nearly a decade after that, people thought that's it, no more Ultimate Universe comics, up until June 2023, when Marvel released issue number 1 of Ultimate Invasion, a 4-issue miniseries written by all-star writer Jonathan Hickman that aimed to bring back the Marvel Ultimate Universe after a decade-long hiatus. Since then, the Ultimate Universe line has grown significantly. Marvel has released several new ongoing titles that all serve as a blank slate for people who may be interested in reading comic books but don't know where to start. We've got Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Black Panther, Ultimate X-Men, The Ultimates, and in January 2025, we'll be getting Ultimate Wolverine. So now that it's been over a year since the announcement and debut of the Ultimate Universe, it's time to take a step back and look at what the Ultimate Universe has given us so far. Before I get into it, I first want to explain what this video is. I'm not going to summarize the Ultimate Universe comic timeline. Instead, I'm going to give a brief review of the first 6 issues of each Ultimate Universe title. So, in this video, we will be reviewing all 4 issues of Ultimate Invasion, the first 6 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, the first 6 issues of Ultimate X-Men, the first 6 issues of Ultimate Black Panther, and the first 6 issues of The Ultimates. At the time of recording this video, it was announced that there will be a Ultimate Wolverine series, but that's not out yet, so I won't be discussing that in case you're watching this in the future. And while there are more than 6 issues out for each one of these titles, if you want to read these titles in a collected edition like a trade paperback will collect the first 6 issues of any one of these given titles, so I thought it'd be good to cover a trade paperback's worth of content. Also, I'm going to keep this video spoiler free because if you're interested in reading these books, I want you to walk away and have the ability to be as surprised and entertained as I was. Anyways, let's take a look at the title that birthed the entire Ultimate Universe, and that is Ultimate Invasion by Jonathan Hickman. Walking into this title, there was a lot of expectations for 2 main reasons. The first being Jonathan Hickman. For those unfamiliar, Jonathan Hickman is an author who has put out consistently innovative and transformative titles. From his indie work with East of West to his cosmic Marvel saga with Fantastic Four, The Avengers, and Secret Wars, all the way to his groundbreaking reinvention of the X-Men with House of X Powers of 10, Hickman consistently delivers on Marvel titles that reimagines the mythos of these characters in compelling and awe-inspiring ways. Looking at Hickman's legacy thus far, it's clear that his work succeeds not because of the crazy action set pieces, but instead because he builds these in-depth sci-fi oriented worlds that are truly spectacular. So it only makes sense that the king of grandiose storytelling would be the perfect author to create a brand new world for Marvel's Ultimate Universe. In application, I think this series was just okay. Basically, in these issues, we follow a character known as the Maker. This is an evil version of Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic from the Ultimate Universe, and essentially he's trying to create a new Ultimate Universe. What follows is a really interesting flip of the traditional Marvel status quo, and it's very clear that Hickman wants to build an in-depth world that feels lived in, and because of that, there's a lot of lore and exposition used to communicate the idea that this is a world with a lot of history. And there's also this really interesting political subplot involving world leaders that I thought had a lot of potential, but ultimately wasn't super fleshed out. And that last sentiment there kind of summarizes how I feel about the Ultimate Invasion 4-issue miniseries. It has a lot of potential. I think many of the threads established in this series will continue to be explored as the Ultimate Universe continues to expand, but all around, I'm not sure if this is necessary for new readers. I would recommend this to completionists who want to understand every little thing that's going on, as there's a lot to unpack and analyze in only 4 issues, but ultimately, I think the rest of the Ultimate Universe does does a great job at standing on its own 2 feet without needing the context from this miniseries. Anyway, let's move on to something that I'm sure everyone wants me to talk about. Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 1 debuted on January 10th, 2024. This is a Spider-Man story that follows a Peter Parker who's in his 30s. He wasn't bit by a radioactive spider in high school. Instead, he's married to Mary Jane, has 2 kids, and leads an ordinary life. Now, of course, he does get bit by the spider and becomes Spider-Man, but this doesn't happen until he's already in his 30s and has a wife and kids. It's a really interesting flip of the traditional Spider-Man narrative. It takes familiar elements from Spidey's long history in the cultural zeitgeist and turns those well-known concepts into something that's captivating for old and new fans alike. And because this is a totally new thing, there's a lot of questions that audiences might think they have the answers to, but there's just that element of not being able to know. For example, Green Goblin is in this comic book, but he's not really a villain. Will he become a villain? We don't know. Gwen Stacy is in this comic book, but is Gwen Stacy gonna die? We don't know. Are we gonna get to see a symbiote version of Ultimate Spider-Man? We don't know. These questions build a really strong sense of anticipation and intrigue that makes this series that much better, in my opinion. But here's the thing, this is still a superhero origin story, and seeing the lovable hero balance their powers and personal life while trying to be the best hero they can is a concept we've seen over and over again. So instead of focusing on the traditional hero's journey, Hickman uses the start of this series to build a narrative that feels like it's about more than just Spider-Man. You have Ben Parker and JJJ running their own news company. You have Harry Osborn's journey of trying to figure out who he is in the wake of his dad's death. You have a menacing subplot surrounding the Kingpin's ominous ways. And then there's this deeper mystery about what the Ultimate Universe truly is. It's a whole lot of world building, which Hickman does best, but in my opinion, these interwoven narratives don't feel like they crowd the story like they did in Ultimate Invasion. Instead, each subplot is riveting. I'm genuinely invested in every single character. And of course, you still get plenty of Spider-Man action, and it's so damn good. Checchetto's artwork is in a league of its own. The action is kinetic, the characters are drawn wonderfully, and the details in the superhero suits are perfect. All around, it's just a gorgeous book to look at. In summary, this is a Spider-Man story that feels unlike anything else. Yes, that's partly because of how Peter is a 30-year-old man with kids, but it's also because the world Peter Parker lives in is a mysterious and enthralling backdrop that I can't wait to learn more about. I would recommend this series to anyone who is remotely interested in comics. It's a perfect jumping on point for new readers, and so far, I think it's been a near perfect read. With that in mind, let's move on to the next book.
Never had a motherfucking weed card.
Ultimate Black Panther was written by Bryan Edward Hill with art by Stefano Caselli, and it was something I was really excited for. I haven't read a lot of Black Panther, but the few stories I have read were amazing. T'Challa is a superhero, but he's also a monarch, and the intersection between heroism and politics can make for a really interesting read. On paper, this book has a lot going on. First, it aims to expand on the scope of the Ultimate Universe by exploring the politics of that world outside of the United States. Second, it's a Black Panther origin story. It shows how T'Challa became the Black Panther. Third, it's a government espionage story that shows how malleable trust can be between a leader and their constituents. All of these ideas are awesome, and it really should have worked for me. I'm a sucker for world building, politics, and grandiose concepts, but it kind of just felt like a swing and a miss. After reading the first 6 issues, it feels like not a lot goes on, and I think the first 6 issues could have easily been condensed into 3 issues. And listen, this is crazy coming from me, because if you know me, I love a slow burn story, but I think the pacing and the things that are happening in Ultimate Black Panther weren't enough to keep me wanting to come back. On top of that, this also feels like the least imaginative Ultimate Universe title. Granted, I haven't read a lot of Black Panther, but there's nothing about the way T'Challa is characterized or the way that he operates that feels radically different from the mainline version of the character. That being said, I do want to continue reading this series just to see what's going to happen, because I am enjoying the plots and the narrative that's set up. I just think it is a little slow, and I wanted more from those first 6 issues. Overall, I would recommend this book for someone who's into slow burn political thrillers. Before we move on to the next book, I just wanted to say, if you like comic books and want to support the channel, make sure to check out the channel sponsor, Organic Price Books. It's a website where you can get great deals on collected edition comics with discounts up to 50% off on omnibus editions, hardcovers, paperbacks, and more. I have a huge comic book collection, and organic price books is where I get most of my stuff from. If you use code YooHoo, you can save $2 on checkout, or you can use code YooHooShip to save 5% off 4 or more books. I'll link the website down below. Anyway, let's move on to the next title. Ultimate X-Men by Peach Momoko is so freaking good. Ironically, this is the Ultimate series I was least looking forward to, but after reading this, it ended up being one of my favorites. The thing about this book is that it's not a retelling of Professor X, Cyclops, or Wolverine's origins. Instead, it follows a cast of high school age students in Japan trying to make sense of their mutant powers. This book is a mystery, it's a drama, and it's a horror story. Watching these high school girls trying to figure out more about their powers is a really fun and interesting premise. But obviously every superhero story needs a villain, and the villain in this book is a dark, looming, and mysterious threat that seems to stalk these young mutant girls. And Peach Momoko's art brings that monster to life in a truly unsettling way. In my opinion, this book is one of the most invigorative ways to re-explore the concept of X-Men and mutanthood. We know historically that the X gene has been used as a metaphor for civil rights and discrimination. In X-Men comics, mutants are a stand-in for marginalized groups, and that's one of the things I appreciate most about X-Men comics is how political they are. However, in this book, Momoko opts to recontextualize the X gene, where instead of mutants being a stand-in for civil rights, they're now being used to explore aspects of mental health, domestic abuse, and trauma response. There's a lot of things that happen in this book that are really difficult to read. Our characters are going through a lot, and it's not just because of the bad guys outside, but also because of their immediate personal lives. And because of that, I think this book reads more like an independent Image comic book than a traditional Marvel series. This book takes risks, it doesn't inundate you with action. Rather, it chooses to let the world build slowly in each issue with interpersonal dialogue that creates a rising sense of anticipation for what's to come. Obviously, when we do get action, it's totally crazy, and I think it feels more threatening because of the time and care Momoko puts in to build up her characters. And these moments of chaos are further heightened by Momoko's beautiful artwork. So if you're looking for a slow burn character mystery that recontextualizes the mythology of X-Men in an innovative way, you gotta check this one out. Even then, I'd recommend this book for anyone who wants a nice character drama. If you're a fan of Image comics and don't love needless superhero action, but do want to tip your toes into Marvel comics, this might be the perfect place for you. Now, let's move on to the last book. Ultimates by Deniz Camp is probably the only series so far that has tried to address what the Ultimate Universe truly is. This is probably the only book you'd benefit greatly from if you read Hickman's Ultimate Invasion and Ultimate Universe one-shot, because this book is seemingly a direct sequel to that. In this story, we learn way more about the politics of the Ultimate Universe. We understand more about why the Ultimate Universe is the way it is in the sense of not having heroes, and we get to lay witness to a whole bunch of creative reimagining of our favorite heroes. Hawkeye goes from a white man working from the government in mainline comics to a indigenous anti-government agent in the Ultimate Universe. In this universe, Doctor Doom is working alongside the Ultimates. Captain America wakes up to a world where America seemingly no longer exists, and there's all sorts of other crazy twists. But the craziest juxtaposition is when you compare the Ultimate Universe version of Hulk from the 2024 run to the 2000s run. The original Ultimate Universe Hulk was a giant, horny rage monster. It's actually crazy. All he wanted to do was and his skills were defined by nothing more than his brute strength. The 2024 version of Hulk is a methodical, meditative, and politically connected threat. It's still unclear who he works for and what his motivations are, but one thing is for sure, his mind is as threatening as his strength. And when you compare that to the 2000s version of Ultimate Hulk, you can't really say the same thing. That guy is dumb as bricks. And it's things like this, intentional characterization that aims to juxtapose the old and the new, that makes this feel like a very well written and methodical book. Deniz Camp has done a great job so far, and I'm super stoked to see what happens next. I'd recommend this series for anyone who enjoys the intrigue of complex world building. Don't walk into this expecting a new action story every week. Instead, brace for a complex interwoven story that aims to pull back the tarp on what the Ultimate Universe truly is. But that's everything the Ultimate Universe has so far. There's a lot of good and really cool comics for people to check out. Honestly, I would say read them all, all if you got the time and money, but prioritize Ultimate Spider-Man because that is definitely my favorite, and also Ultimate X-Men. But what do you guys think of the Ultimate Universe? Have you been reading it? Let me know down below if you have. Let me know what you like, what you hate, and what you want to see. And if you made it far in this video, please be sure to like and subscribe for more content. As always, hope y'all enjoyed. I will see you next time.